Thank everybody for joining me today. I know that for many of us, we're experiencing a kind of fatigue. So many of our classes, meetings, friendship connections have come through Zoom, and I know many of us have sort of like enough already. So thank you for taking your time this Sunday morning to join me here. So I want to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq peoples. Um, I am just across the bay, the mighty Bay of Fundy, and I look out every morning to the place where the legendary Glooscap sleeps. And Glooscap, of course, is a very important character in Mi'kmaq legend. I have always felt a deep reciprocal connection with the living earth. It began in childhood, high up in the arms of an old weeping willow who loved me in a way that, well, I don't know that I would have otherwise perhaps survived my childhood. She didn't speak to me in words, but her presence and abiding love stay with me to this day. So, fast forward, if you will, almost 60 years to 2017 when I was offered a writing residency at the Joggins Fossil Institute. The Joggins Fossil Institute is a UNESCO World Heritage Site on the mighty Bay of Fundy. And I was thrilled to be invited for this residency. The cornerstone of the work at Joggins takes us back 300 million years to the Carboniferous era. And this was the time when the great mystery or the great dream, or however you refer to the divine energy that certainly exists in our world, this was the time when the great mystery was experimenting with life on land. So it takes us back to the time of Pangea. And Pangea is Greek for one earth. Pangea was also the name of the supercontinent that existed 300 million years ago that contained most of the land masses that we know today. And where we are now, interestingly enough, was 300 million years ago was equatorial rainforest. So during this particular residency, I went through a year-long odyssey in communication with these 300 million year old rocks that took me deep into the heart of my own deep eco despair. I have been an artist and an activist all of my life. And at that point, I was feeling a deep level of despair in terms of what has not been happening with the climate movement. So I took this eco despair to the 300 million year old rock and came to learn from them what it means to practice the thing that eco-Buddhist philosopher Joanna Macy refers to as active hope. So today is all based around the work of Joanna's work. So we're going to be jumping a little bit into looking at what is the work that reconnects, what is the three stories, what are the three stories of our time. But most importantly, we're going to be delving into some creative writing practice to explore the four spirals of the work that reconnects. And those four spirals are coming from gratitude, honoring our pain, seeing with new eyes, and going forth, taking what we have generated inside out into the great collective so that we can do the good work that we're all meant to do here today. All right, so I want to just turn the floor over right now to my friend and ally, Lee Penny. I was blessed to meet Lee when I was studying at Mount Allison. And when I began my residency at Joggins, it was an arts science residency. There's a lot of amazing collaborations that are happening around the world today with artists and scientists collaborating. So during my residency, I was able to work with resident paleontologist at Joggins. I worked with Dr. Robert Lapp with eco-poetry, Dr. Michael Fox on cultural geography, and also the amazing Dr. Paulette Steeves, who is a Cree Métis scholar who now holds a Canada Research Chair at Algoma University. So to say a little bit more about the richness of the arts science connection, I'm going to turn the floor over to Lee. And Lee, please tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and why this matters to you, why this kind of work matters.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I studied environmental science at Mount Allison, and I'm now, I work as a data analyst for ECW. So my expertise is more so in the statistics and everything, more so than the biology, although there is a lot of overlap. So a part of my work involves, looking at and understanding these climate change models, helping, local governments and citizens understand what that means, for us here on the ground. And I, over the course of this study and in my career, I've had to, rely on artists such as Elizabeth a lot for the wisdom that you need to kind of get through this and still be relatively okay, because this is a very emotional topic. It is very challenging to wake up, 5 days of the week and sort of, do climate change day in and day out. And, there's a lot of hope to be found, but it also is a very heavy subject. And so art and science truly need each other. They can inform each other. And, there's things that you get in science that can be inspired through art and vice versa. And you need to give yourself room to express these feelings and sit with these feelings and allow yourself to be creative in how you deal with them. But yeah, and like I said, from a scientific point of view, I can tell you there's plenty of reasons to hope. It's not all over. so let's, first and foremost, take care of that note right away. Yeah, I have some links to post for you. I might do that later and just chat a bit about those things later, just some resources for you to go and read on your own. But yeah, so it's a little bit about me.
Yay. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. And it's always a delight to have you with me on these webinars. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So much of the work that we're going to be delving into today, a more expanded view of it can be found in the book Active Hope, How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy by Joanna Macy and Dr. Chris Johnstone. And I highly recommend reading the whole book because we're only here for a little over an hour now and we're not going to have time. I don't want to try and give you everything that you might get from reading the book. But it's a powerful piece of work. When I look at this book, which was written in 2012, much of it is still relevant today. However, if I were to add a new couple of subtitles, so the subtitle now is How to Face the Mess We're In Without Going Crazy. A couple of new subtitles might be Active Hope. Sorry, I'm looking at my own scribbling here. Yes. How to join with others of light to our collective power and turn this ship away from what is called extractor culture towards a culture of regeneration. And I know Lee's going to be talking a little bit more about some specific examples of cultures of regeneration, but we don't hear about these things on the news because they don't sell papers. The best way to keep the masses entranced is to keep us scared and shopping. But there are amazing, amazing things happening around the world that have to do with regenerative agricultural practices. Landscape regeneration. And if anybody wants to know more about that, I encourage you to Google We Are the Ark. We Are the Ark. And maybe if Panis, you could put that in the chat, that would be great. We Are the Ark. Movements for wildlife stewardship, garden cities, garden roofs, local food security, and the earth jurisprudence movement. All of these things are humanity at our best. Another really great subtitle and really important is the idea of active hope, how to change the mess we're in and experience the joy of living. Now here I'm going to share with you a little quote from Potawatomi elder and biologist Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. She reminds us that even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world is giving us moments of joy and wonder. I choose joy over despair, not because I have the sand, but because joy is what the earth is giving me daily, and I must return the gift. Joy is what the earth is giving me daily, and I must return the gift. All right. So, with a spirit of gentle joy on this icy day, let me tell you a little bit about how the rest of our time together is going to unfold. I'm going to share briefly with you what the 3 stories of our time, as outlined in the book Active Hope, are. And then I'm going to introduce you to the 4 main practices of the work that reconnects. And I'll share them again, coming from gratitude, honoring our pain, seeing with new eyes, and going forth. And then we're going to jump into a period of writing, a little mini creative writing workshop. And you might say, well, why are we doing that? My experience in leading these kind of webinars since I wrote this book are that sometimes the focus can be too much on me giving information and not enough about you having an embodied experience. And so over the last 6 months, I've been involving these writing practices in the workshop so that my goal is for you to leave today with some solid strategies of some practices that can help you deal with the climate crisis and what most of us are experiencing, which is a kind of eco-anxiety. And by the way, eco-anxiety is a sign that you are actually mentally healthy. This is why nature gave us these phytochemicals to say, hey, something's wrong. We need to pay attention, right? So eco-anxiety is a sign that we are mentally healthy. And so we want to learn how we can work with our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can bring our best and not be frozen by this eco-anxiety. We are going to have a little bio break at some point, and then I want to come back and hear what you've written, share some resources before we draw our workshop, our time together, to a close. All righty, so I'm going to ask everybody right now to take a nice deep breath. And we're going to get ready to do some writing. So I'm going to ask that you have your paper and pens or pencils ready, that you are in a space of quiet, that hopefully you won't be interrupted, that you've turned your phone off. And I will let you know that you're going to get the most out of this if you allow yourself to give your 100% attention to it. So I'm going to begin this time with a poem by Rilke, which was translated by Joanna Macy and Anita Burroughs. It's called Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower. And I'm going to ask that you let yourself really settle into your body. Close your eyes and really listen to the words of this brilliant poet. quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. Let this darkness be a bell tower, and you, the bell. As you ring, what batters you becomes your strength. Move back and forth into the change. What is it like, such intensity of pain? If the drink is bitter, turn yourself to wine. In this uncontainable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your senses, the meaning discovered there. And if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. Quiet friend who has come so far, feel how your breathing makes more space around you. So I'm going to invite everybody to close your eyes and settle down, 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 down. Breathe down into the soles of your feet. And let your feet connect with the rhythms of Mother Earth. Breathing down, down, down. Let yourself let go of anything that is unlike love. And with your eyes closed, breathing down deeply into your feet, we're going to enter into the first spiral of the work that reconnects. And this is the spiral of coming from gratitude. So I'm going to ask you to invite forward into the wisdom of your inner being any sensory images, sights, sounds, smells, tastes of the natural world. So invite into your being any sensory information about the natural world. So you may find yourself sitting in one of your favorite places in nature. You may find yourself musing on the jet stream. You may find yourself deep in the ocean. But let yourself bring forth sensory information about perhaps your favorite place or places in nature. And I really want you to allow yourself to experience this. So really invite in, what is the sense of smell here? What does the air smell like? What does this ocean smell like? What does this flower smell like? What does this storm smell like? And let yourself bring in the sense, your visual sense of what you see, and let yourself see wherever you are or whatever it is you are being with in incredible detail. There may be a riot of colors, there may be particular beautiful subtle shades of brown and gray and green. So we're letting all our senses come alive. Smell, sight, sound, taste, touch. And as you experience that in your body, I'm going to ask you to just quietly open your eyes and pick up your pen or pencil and write down whatever it is on your paper. This is a 2-minute timed writing exercise. You have 2 minutes to write. Go. And stay in your senses. Anything to do with the natural world for which you are incredibly grateful. And keep your pen or pencil moving on the page. This is not about thinking, it's about a good. We're halfway through. You have 30 more seconds. And let yourself finish up your thoughts of gratitude. And eyes up here. Good. Thank you. So a reminder that one of the things that Joanna talks about, and of course we can, this is echoed a great deal when we read the work of Thich Nhat Hanh or the work of Sharon Salzberg, who is one of our leaders in terms of mindfulness practice, is that these practices require a daily discipline, right? So you're not necessarily going to germinate the seeds of active hope by sitting down, once a month and connecting in with the things that you are grateful for. This is part of a daily practice to build new in the brain. Dianna Beresford Kroger, who an incredible medical biochemist, biologist, whose work has also lifted me a great deal over the last few years. Dianna studied the ancient Celtic earth-based arts in a way that is now no longer taught. And she says that gratitude is a core part of the teachings that she received. That gratitude is in itself a kind of medicine. She also highlights what Robin Wall Kimmerer says, that it is our responsibility to maintain a space of joy. And so the medicine to be able to find joy in these difficult times comes from the practice of gratitude. So the first in the series of the spiral that reconnects, coming from gratitude. All right, so we're going to move on now to the second spiral practice from the work that reconnects. And this is the practice of honoring our pain. So many of us are experiencing what a friend of mine refers to as catastrophe fatigue, right? If we hear one more story of a collapsing ecosystem, a species gone extinct, the rise of right-wing totalitarianism, all of these things, sometimes it just feels like enough, stop. But the truth is, our power can only come if we can find the time, again, on a regular basis, to look these things in the eye and honor it. When we do not honor our pain, when we do not give our time on a regular basis to express it, then we often find ourselves frozen, right? So we know the amygdala, the old brain, is in there, fight, flight, or freeze. When we don't give room for our pain to be expressed, then we often end up in a frozen place. I want to share with you here a little saying by the poet Rumi. He says, "Cry out. Don't be stolid and silent with your pain. Lament, and let the milk of loving flow into you." Lament, and let the milk of loving flow into you. So I'm going to share with you right now a poem from my book. And I learned about the power from lament several years ago when I went to the University of Toronto to take a poetry writing course with the amazing Canadian poet Ken Babstock. And there was a beautiful young man there, Hillel, a young Jewish man. And he talked to me about the power of lamentation. He told me that the ancient Mesopotamians believed that when difficulties came to their communities, whether it be a flood or a fire or a warring peoples who had come and taken away some of their most brilliant young people, they believed that the divine powers would visit them and help them deal with whatever was going on if they got together and loudly lamented. So this poem is my particular lamentation for the ocean. And once I finish this poem, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to write a lamentation about something that has particularly touched you in terms of some of the things we are losing in this, the 6th great mass extinction. Lamentation for the ocean. The grandmother of all sentient life is the ocean. Plundered and poisoned, she is renitent now, Salatia's last stand. Along her once lush, now barren shores, the sun stands stoic while the daughters heap their heads with dust, while the elders keep the silence. A watery sun rises in the blood-dimmed sky as from parched throats we cry as one, "Oh, grandmother, please forgive us." The grandmother of all life on earth is the ocean. Once home of Hina, Moa, Neptune, and the goddess Yamaya. Parts of her are dying now. Within her once fecund, now beggared realm. The green cells atrophy while the whale keens her last, while a 120-year-old turtle sinks like stone, his guts twisted with plastic. A pale moon canters in a green-gray sky as the shifting tides glow with uranium. O grandmother, who art the ocean, please forgive us. All right, you have 3 minutes to write your own lamentation. Go. And let yourself breathe deeply into this pain. And we're halfway through. You have 1 more minute. A few more seconds. And finishing up your thought. And eyes up here, please. Thank you for diving so deeply into that. The truth is, for those of us that are sensitive, and I believe that all of us here are sensitive in this way, we can't feel this pain all the time. And so we want to give ourselves dedicated periods of time so that this pain can be released to allow for life-giving energy to come in. So I encourage you to maybe want to get yourself a little cairn, a little bowl, so that when you become aware of something painful that has happened, you can sit with your grief for a moment and write it down and put it in that bowl. All right, but something on a regular basis, because it's there. I know for me, one of the things I do when I, for instance, drive by a clear cut, So I live in a part of the world where there is a lot of clear cutting happening. And when I see a clear cut, it breaks my heart. So sometimes when I'm alone, I'll pull over on the side of the road and get out and say a little prayer and offer my thanks for the life that was there and my great apologies that it was torn apart in such a way. So again, this is part of a daily practice to keep us sane, right? To keep our nervous systems from not being overloaded. So a daily practice of honoring our pain. The other thing, and this is very important, is to make sure that we find others that we can share our pain with. Again, think back to the ancient Mesopotamians. They got together in collectively and they expressed the pain. I think about my Scottish ancestors. When grief happened, the whole community grieved loud and long. So this is not something to do always by ourselves, isolated. This is something to do collectively with others. And this has been a practice humans have engaged in since recorded history began. All right, so time to honor our pain, and thank you all for doing that. All right, so moving on to the next spiral practice, which is the idea of seeing with new eyes. So seeing with a wider sense of self. I recently watched an incredible TED Talk by Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor called My Stroke of Insight. And Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor is a neuroscientist who had spent her life with great curiosity and passion studying the brain. And when she was in her late 30s, she had a stroke. And because her core being is a scientist with all that curiosity, she had a stroke in her left brain. And as her brain was starting to go offline, as she said, and it took a period of about 6 hours, she was observing what was happening. Oh, the part of my brain that holds memory is going offline. The part of my brain that can take a book and see words is going offline. The part of my brain that can hear another human being talk and understand what they're saying is going offline. And what happened as her left brain totally shut down is that she spent a goodly period of time until she recovered, and it took her 8 years to recover, in her right brain, in the part of our brain which nature has set up so that we can experience the quantum truth that we really are all connected, that it's just energy. We are just energy. We are all one. So she had an embodied experience of what that feels like. And to see with new eyes means being able to go into that perspective. It's not something woohoo. It's not it's not something that's vague and not real. It's actually quite real. So seeing with new eyes, and this is something that we can learn from earth-based teachings, from indigenous teachings. And here I'm going to talk a little bit about the work of indigenous elder, Dr. Albert Marshall. He's not a doctor. Albert Marshall. And I was introduced to his teachings, and this is the idea of what he calls two-eyed seeing. So it's seeing the earth with the best of all the Western practices, Western philosophies, Western learning. But it's also seeing our world through the best of indigenous teachings. And in indigenous teachings, we are not the only people. There are the tree people and sky people and the rock people. There are four-legged people, eight-legged people, winged people, rooted people. Right? So seeing with new eyes and therefore developing a wider sense of self. So I'm going to read you the closing poem from my book, um, which in which I was really in that place of my expanded self, sense of who I am. And then I'm going to give you 3 minutes to write your own sense of what it would feel like if you could understand, if you could be in that embodied space of connection with all life. 300 million years ago, life conspired with rock, sea, and sky to dream a grand experiment. And so it follows that, like the flow of Fundy's tidal bore and the whisperings of my beloved weeping willow, I too am life's dream. Yes, I, the patience of the seed who trusts the dreamer's growing need to gestate in her womb of dark and thus distill a silent spark of wonder, rend asunder this empirical nightmare scheme. Yes, I, the thousand winds that blow, I, the silent evening glow, I, the pebble in the stream, I, the sunlight's constant beam, I, the rainbow in the sky, I, the tears of those who cry, I, the bursting leaves of spring, I, the song the green woods sing. Yes, I am life's dream. Whose dream are you? You have 3 minutes. Go. Seeing with new eyes, widening your sense of self. You have 2 more minutes. You have 1 more minute. Thirty more seconds. Good, and finish up your thought. Pencils down, eyes up here. Great. Seeing with new eyes. All right, now we're going to go into the fourth practice of the spiral, and this is the practice of going forth. Right, so here is where we're taking all of the goodies that we have gathered from coming from gratitude, from honoring our pain, from seeing with a new sense of self, out into the world to do the thing that is ours to do. One of the things that Joanna encourages us to really think about is our collective strength. Right? We live in a world that has really taken the ideas that came forth in the late medieval age, the whole idea of our individuality, and that was important, was an important movement in the human evolution. We've kind of taken it too far so that we've gotten so involved in the great I that we have forgotten about the power of we. It is in our collective power that we have what is necessary to make this turn on a dime that we need to do. So going forth. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently this time. Instead of starting with the poem, I'm going to ask you just to take 1 minute right now and write down all of the things that you are really good at. Okay, 1 minute, all the things you are really good at. And these don't have to be things that other people say. I'm a really good cook, I'm a good gardener, I'm good at listening to people. All of the things that you are really good at. You have 1 minute. Go. Good, you have 30 more seconds. Things that you are really good at, things that you have a passion to do. Good, you have a few more seconds. Great. Eyes up here. All right. So one of the things I used to think over my years as an activist was that I had to be able to do it all, right? I had to be able to go stand on the front lines as a protester. I had to be able to make a really great presentation to the mayor in the town I lived when they were about to chop down a stand of birch trees. I had to work with international organizations. I had to be able to do it all, rather than saying, what are the things that I do best? What are the things that I do best, and how can I bring that to my work as an activist? Right? Because those things I do best, those things I have passion to do, then my spirit will feed me to move forward in those particular ways. So that the people that are really good at lobbying the government, they're lobbying the government. The people that have the courage to stand in front of a line of policemen and say, no, you're not going to frack this land, they're doing that. The people that maybe that's not quite their thing, but they make the best tuna sandwich, and that's going to feed the people on the front line, right? So we want to be able to bring to this next piece of these portal times what it is we do really well. So I'm going to read you a little poem that comes from my book, and this is the voice of dirt. And one of the things we know is that the regenerative abilities of the earth are off the scale. If we can leave the earth alone, the topsoil, the earth can regenerate itself within a 10-year period. So I'm going to read this poem about dirt, and then I'm going to give you 3 minutes just to play with writing about what it is you might like to go forward and commit yourself to doing. So here we go. I am dirt. You use my name as a put down, but hey man, wise up. In my atmosphere lives a riot of riches beyond compare. Fungi and mites, pollen and bacteria, and other cool things without which life as you know it, life as we grow it, will fail. Can you dig it? Oh man, that was a joke. Y'all need to lighten up. I'll get straight to the point. Go back to your time and repair me. Go back to your time and declare me king or queen or his royal blackesty. Hell, the title doesn't matter, only the esteem. Remember, what you've destroyed, we can heal. Honoring dirt, a simple shortcut from stupidity to sanity. All right, you've got 3 minutes. Right. We're liberating our imaginations to go forth. What is something you honestly feel you can make a regular commitment to doing? That is about protecting what's left. It is about being part of this new change in consciousness. Good. Time is halfway up. Going forth. Liberating our imaginations towards a culture of regeneration, where we are giving more to the earth than we are taking. Great, you have 1 more minute. Good, finish up your thought. All right, thank you very much. I could feel the concentration across the miles here. I'm going to give us just a 2 or 3 minute bio break here. So if you need to get a cup of tea or use the washroom, and when we come back, I'm going to be asking you to look at what you wrote and pick kind of a favorite, maybe phrase or a few words or something that you might like to share. While we're taking this bio break, Paniz, can I ask you to post can I ask you to screen share the title, the cover of my book, because I want to talk a little bit about the picture of the cliffs on the front when we come back. All right, so let's take 3 minutes, a nice little bio break, and we'll come back and hear a little bit from you. Thank you very much. So we'll come back in about 45 more seconds. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. I just wanted to show you this picture quickly before we go into our session with our own work. I wanted to show you the front cover of my book to show you these are the cliffs at the Joggins Fossil Institute. So you can see the striations in the cliff. As you go south on the cliff becomes older. And of course, the stories in this cliff changes every day because every day, twice a day, there are 150 billion tons of water. That's the pressure of the water that comes from the mighty Bay of Fundy. So these rocks are over 300 million years, and it was from these rocks that much of the wisdom included in this book came. So I just wanted to show you that. So thanks very much, Panez. You can take that down now. So I would like us to just take a moment, and I want you to go and have a look at the work that you have written. Just take a couple of minutes and let your eyes scan through all of the things that you wrote, whether it was from the meditation on coming from gratitude, whatever you wrote with honoring your pain, seeing with new eyes, going forth. And I want you to let yourself circle, just two or three maybe phrases or sentences that jump out at you as being important or something that you might like to share. So just take a minute and have a look at what came down, what you wrote. And then once you've done that, I'm going to ask you to share that phrase or sentence in the chat. So what is one phrase or sentence that jumped out at you that you would like to share? And let yourself share it in the chat, please. The Big Bang emitted me somewhere, still vibrating. Oh, goody. I love that. Thank you, Glenn. I trust my mind and body to help me survive. Statistically speaking, I have a 100% success rate. Yay, Lee. Thank you. Heather, breathing with the air's breathing, moving with the water's moving. I am spreading beyond this place. Oh, that's lovely, Heather. Lillian, new beginnings. The earth shows us how, like the dandelions who begin peeking through. Oh, I'm a massive lover of dandelions, Lillian. Thank you for sharing that. New beginnings, yes. Susan, suffering in silent isolation is not healthy for us. We need to reach out to each other, find our we, and together find a way forward. Thank you, Elizabeth. You are ever inspiring joy to us all. Oh, thank you so much, Susan. But you are so right, Susan. Suffering in silent isolation is not the way for us to deal with this. Paul, healing the jet streams. Breathing clean, healing the jet streams. And Paul is a meteorologist. I've learned a lot from Paul. Thank you, Paul. Katie, I am the joyful snowplow pushing, heaping joy all over town wherever it will fit. Yes, yes. And Paul, I see what you meant. Clear air. Yes, breathing clean, healing the jet streams. Yes, clear air. Wonderful. Anyone else? All right. Oh, I miss Rob. Hope for life, live for hope. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Great. And somebody's inviting someone else to come and shovel some snow. Yes, you can come to our house too. All right, Paul. Yes, and thank you. I know we all want to be of service today, so thank you. All right. So I want you to just take a moment and feel into all the wisdom, right? One of the things Sharon Salzberg talks about in terms of mindfulness practices, finding and being with our wise mind. We all have a wise mind inside. And sometimes entering into creative practices can help us touch base with that wise mind that we all have. All right, so we've been talking about the fact that we want to be part of a culture of regeneration. As environmentalist Paul Hawkins says, we can change the climate crisis within one generation. And that's his new book, Regeneration. I highly recommend it. So I'm going to pass the floor over right now to my beautiful friend Lee and ask Lee to share. She's going to give us some specific examples of the culture of regeneration as they are showing themselves in our world today. Lee, you take the floor, please. Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much. And thank you everybody who shared just then. That's probably my favorite part of these sessions. So yeah, just some specific things that I hope will inspire some hope and some joy in you today. So one of the things, and I talked about this in a previous event we had, and you may have heard about it before, but we are now finding species of bacteria that can break down plastic, and the end products of that breakdown are non-toxic. And that bacteria are fine to do this. And there's actually worms that also have these microorganisms in their guts. And the worms themselves are fine. So, it's the reason why plastic is so hard to deal with is because it's all these polymers of repeating molecules. And it takes a lot of energy to break that down, which is why it lasts for so long. And so, it's not shocking that a bacterial species would evolve to deal with this pollutant in its environment, because bacteria do that all the time. But what's shocking about it is they've somehow developed this enzyme that can, meet that energy demand and break this down into, I think the end products are, carbon dioxide and water, which are two things that if we employ that and use these bacteria on a massive scale, it's, these end products are things that we know how to deal with. So that is very exciting. And every year we find more and more of these species that have been able to do this. So, the earth and her organisms will adapt. So there is some hope there. And another thing that I talked about in our previous sessions is a man named Akira Miyawaki. He is a Japanese botanist that Elizabeth actually introduced me to. Now his work has been around since the 90s, but it sort of takes the idea of reforestation and applies an ecosystem based lens to it, because, right now at my own work at ECW, we're looking at this, 2 billion tree initiative. And what Mr. Miyawaki's method suggests is, like, you can't just focus on the numbers. You have to look at how a whole ecosystem works and think about it that way. And you also, where it's appropriate, have to consider human beings as a part of that ecosystem too. Sometimes the appropriate step for conservation is taking ourselves out of the equation and letting nature heal on its own, but not always. And this is something that I've come to appreciate a lot more, learning from Indigenous perspectives. And it's one thing to know logically, like, yes, okay, we're part of the ecosystem, sure. But I think it's another thing to really feel the truth of that in your body and understand that we can make nature worse, but we can also make it a lot better, and I don't think human beings are monstrous. I don't think we're this, terrible thing that happened to the planet. I really don't. Yeah, so I'm going to share some links with you now just for some further reading. See if I can find my arrow here. Okay, there we go. So the first link is actually to a report from the Indigenous Environmental Network, and they looked at quantifying the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that were offset by Indigenous activists across Turtle Island. So that includes Canada as well as the US. And so there's some very promising numbers in there, and it's good to see, a quantitative perspective on this stuff, because sometimes we wonder, is there any point in working this hard? And yes, there is. there very much is. And then the second link is a few things from the Tamarack Institute. So this is part of their climate cohort. And this is just one example of networks of people coming together to learn from each other. I mean, this is happening all over the place. Here in the Maritimes, we also have the Atlantic Permaculture Network. So, if you're ever feeling anxious, what helps me is realizing that I can take a break and I can come back to it when I'm ready, because if I go, there's still going to be a bunch of other people who are doing this work. So it's not all on you. And like Elizabeth was saying, it's not all on you to be there all the time and to be there as somebody who knows everything. Like, pick something that interests you and do it when you can, when you have the energy and bandwidth for it. Yeah, that there is a way to approach this that brings you joy and love. And I guess the one final thing that I want to say is, with eco-anxiety and stuff, is your physiological system doesn't really understand the difference between an imagined scenario and one that's happening right in front of you. So when you get anxious and when you're thinking about these doomsday scenarios, you're pumping your body full of these reactionary, stress hormones and the adrenaline, because you're preparing yourself to react to something, but that something isn't happening. So you have nothing to really react to. You're sitting on your couch, paralyzed. So, one thing, and this is something I wrote in the chat, is trust your body to react appropriately to what is happening in front of you. And if you're looking out and you're worried about, a storm or a disaster event, and you're sitting there just thinking about it, well, that disaster not in front of you right now. And it's actually funny, the more severe a storm is, the less stress I am, because now my stress is actually proportional to what's happening in front of me. But, that anxiety is never really going to go away. But yeah, so something that's helped me a lot is just this daily practice of checking in with my body and trusting it and learning to tell the difference between, is this a realistic threat that's in front of me right now? And if not, how do I prepare for that so I don't feel as anxious about it? So those are some links, and I hope this little bits of hope that helped you. There's plenty more. We're doing better now as per the climate change report that just came out. The worst case scenario in this IPCC report is actually not as bad as the last worst case scenario. So emissions haven't peaked yet, so things are still going to unfortunately get worse over the coming decades, but they are not going to be as bad as we predicted the last time. So that's good. It's not great, but it's better than it was. So yeah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you, Lee. Thank you. So it's great to have places where you can find on a regular basis some of the good news stories that are happening. So thank you for sharing that. Paniz, I'm going to ask you just to put up on the screen share. I also gathered a few resources that I wanted to share with you, places that you can go if you just need to feel like, hey, this is doable. It's going to be hard. We have a hard road in front of us. Yes, we do. But, all is not lost. The story of the great unraveling is not the end to the story. The story is being written. So Panis, can you put up that screen share of the links, or else put them in the chat, whichever is easier for you?
I will put them in the chat.
So I know. Okay, great. So Panis is going to put some other resources in the chat, and I'll just speak to them. So the first one I know is, again, the work of environmentalist Paul Hawken, an incredible book called Regeneration: How We Can Turn Things Around with the Climate Crisis in One Generation. Right? It used to be thought that certain of the things that we have set in motion, they were going to take forever to be undone. But we can turn this around within one generation. All right. So yes, Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation. Paul Hawken. I highly recommend getting that book. Dirt, the movie. Dirt, the movie is brilliant. The first part of it, I cried my head off looking at all of the incredible devastation we have wreaked upon the planet's topsoil. But by the end of it, you understand that the topsoil can regenerate within a decade. And it shows places on the planet that were formerly thought to be just, that's it, it's brown, it's barren, it's done. Now it's lush and green, and communities of people are living on and working with this land in a way that is so beautiful. So Dirt, the movie, I highly recommend. My stroke of insight is the TED Talk of the neuroscientist I was telling you about, Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor. Watch it, get your hankies, it's very beautiful. Her new book, which I'm also reading right now, is also well worth the read. Braiding Sweetgrass, Our Reciprocal Connection with the Living Earth by Robin Wall Kimmerer is a regular go-to for me. Her chapter 2, The Grammar of Animacy, is one of my daily, I visit her daily there. And the link to my own book, Daring to Hope at the Cliff's Edge, Pangea's Dream Remembered, which is available in Sackville at Tidewater Books, and also available through Chapel Street Editions. All right. So I hope I've left you with some ideas of how you can move forward, some ideas of how you can create this for yourself. Practice requires discipline, but don't let yourself be put off at the idea of discipline. Any artist, any athlete will tell you that discipline plus play equals something marvelous and beyond our imaginations. All right, so I'm going to close the formal part of this gathering right now with a poem, and then we're going to turn the recording off. And if anybody wants to have a bit more of a informal conversation, I'm happy to stick around. So here we go. This is called 7-Generation Thinking. To hell with the hero's journey. No one person can save us now. We overcome the eddies of gloom that snag our thoughts in a downward spiral by radiating possibility. We treat the poison of prevailing apathy by taking measured, wholehearted action towards accessing our collective birthright. In its death throes, the patriarchy is exercising its only remaining power, the power to destroy. But given time and our willing help, nature can reclaim her dead spaces, and the soil will once again hum with the community of living organisms. The remaining ancient forests will stand with us in solidarity. We overcome the eddies of gloom that snag our thoughts in a downward spiral by radiating possibility. Thank you so much for coming today. And again, hang around if you want to have a chat, but we'll formally end our session. Blessings to you all. Namaste.